And we're back. Tom Gibson, Chuck Augustin, and we're here and still remaining in Nye County.
Richard, you still there, buddy?
Yes, Chuck,
What?
I am. Good evening to you.
Good
and
evening.
You, Tom Gibson. I have a question for Tom Gibson regarding perjury laws. For example, my crazy neighbor got a restraining order against me and lied like a rug under oath to get that restraining order hearing. Angela Bellows' opinion in her office during our meeting was that, well, she's crazy, she believes her own lies, so it's not perjury.
Well, for practical purposes, that might be true, but I see people that are, babbling lunatics that are drool and rub feces on themselves in the jail cells, and they're sent up to Lakes Crossing, which is the state mental hospital to determine whether or not a person's competent to stand trial. And 99% of the time, they come back as competent and good to go. And so that said, I'm sure that if the person, even if she's a little crazy, is committing perjury, the bottom line is on an insanity defense, if you know the difference between right and wrong, and are able to assist counsel in a trial, you are competent. And that's all it takes. So I mean, the short answer is no, that's not entirely true, but she wasn't leading you astray, is that the prosecutors don't want to deal with lunatics. And even if you're not McNaughton crazy, and McNaughton is the case that we pattern our insanity defense after, if you are not McNaughton crazy, but you're still nuts, then there's no reason to prosecute you on like minor things like this. And when I say minor, is in it might not seem minor to you, but in the big scheme of things, it depends on who was hurt and in what degrees, and that's whether a case is minor or major.
Plus, it's very hard to prove perjury, isn't it?
Right, and that's one of the things too. Is if you're stating an opinion, and I'm stating, if Chuck was to say that Hillary is an honest woman, and I'm like, are you nuts? Of course she's not. And if he said it under oath, I mean, I would hope that someone would prosecute him, but
yes,
they won't. Okay, because that was his opinion. Now, I'm just joking because Chuck would never say Hillary was honest or innocent, or anyone by the name of Clinton out of that family has got, well, I won't say any more because I don't want my opinion known.
Well, let's take a couple of examples here. For instance, she told the judge that I was married to her cousin. Well, that's an outright lie. She told the judge, I've known him since I was 6. That's an outright lie. Said I was arrested on her property with a gun and a silencer. That's an outright lie. Jasperson could have checked that on his computer immediately in 2 or 3 minutes and found that would be a lie. See, these lies are pathetic and sad, and a 5-year-old kid would recognize them as lies. She said I have bugs in her house. I'm listening to her phone calls on her cell phone.
Yeah, well,
now, the second part of that perjury law deals with material. It has to be material to the case.
Yeah, a material misstatement, and if it's not material, see, that's where you get into the gray fuzzy area. If a person, if somebody's stating an opinion, that's sometimes not material. If you're making a statement of opinion, though, say you're a doctor and you're giving a person, a prognosis for recovery, then it moves from just an opinion to a material statement. A fraud is a material misstatement used to entice a person to do something. In other words, you're saying that this is. I own this property. I'm going to sell it to you at this price, and in fact you don't own the property, and you take the person's money. Then that's sort of the same thing as along the same lines as the materiality needed in a perjury charge.
Yes, to me it seems like the material part of this particular case would be the fact that she did it to obtain a restraining order illegally, and she shouldn't have been granted one.
I believe that based on what you told me, she could have been charged, she could have been successfully prosecuted and sentenced. For practical purposes, though, again, it depends on who did what to whom. Was a protective order actually issued?
Absolutely, and it was extended. The temporary was applied for. It was extended for a year by the Jasper.
Okay, so then we have, then you got a problem, because then the court is assuming that it can be proved that this was a material misstatement. The court is becoming part of a fraud, and the court itself, the judge, the prosecutor, whatever, they're not knowingly entertaining a fraud. But if they're doing it because actually the material misstatement that is relied on by the judge. So the court actually has, or the judge and the state would be a victim in this as well as you.
Yes, obviously it's the first time offense, being charged with perjury, and she's not going to get a serious offense. But I have 19 lies that she told under oath on DVD of the restraining order hearing.
Well, wait a minute. When was this?
Approximately over a year ago.
Okay, if you're within 2 years, there's a 2-year statute of limitations on something like that. If you're within 2 years, you can sue her. Now, problem is, if she's that much of a nitwit, she probably doesn't own anything worth suing for. But in the event she had material items that or money, especially if she has insurance that will cover it, then you got something you can go after. And again, the problem is, like anything else, usually the people that commit offenses are the ones that don't have any money and they don't have a pot to pee in, but and so they're not really a very good target for a lawsuit. But you could also sue her for injunctive relief and have an injunction against her for doing this to you in the future. And if she ever did it again, then she's violating the injunction, and the court could easily, for contempt, put her into jail up to 25 days and a $500 fine per event.
Yeah, the next part of her mess, and giving false information to a police officer, Armendez went over to her house, listens to her lies, and Armendez got a Woody for me, so he comes back to my house with a ticket already written and hands it to me to sign. I got the word from Sharon Worley, oh, no, that's not how we do it. Well, I haven't written the complaint up yet. I've been real busy. But I will file that with Sharon Worley.
File it with her?
Department, in the Attorney General's office.
Oh, okay. Now, when you're talking about a complaint, you're talking about a criminal complaint?
Well, yeah, against Armendez. Well, it'd be fraud and theft by deception. That's what Armendez is guilty of.
Okay, so...
he takes her lies, comes to my door, repeats her lies, steals money at this restraining, the ticket. I got ticketed for breach of peace, $640.
Okay, so, but keep in mind that law enforcement agents are under a limited immunity, so you can get around it, but you have to show, usually you have to show malice. And the fact that, if there's any good faith at all claimed and that can be shown, then they're off the hook.
Well, I don't have him on record saying, I'm going to screw with you. But
that's a different story, because then you got the I shot the sheriff routine, and you can shoot the sheriff, like the song goes, if you're doing it in self-defense. If the sheriff or the deputy sheriff is doing something that's unlawful and affecting you, then you can do whatever the law allows to stop that and keep it from happening.
Well, to just run around handing tickets out, that doesn't make any sense, does it?
No, but I don't have all the facts, and so I just based on what you're telling me, you sound correct.
Yeah.
The only thing I'm going to say was just one little caveat is that when people perceive things, and they perceive things the way they see it in their own through their own eyes and through their own brain and mind, but if you ask 20 people the same question, you're going to get 20 variations of the same answer, or maybe 20 completely different answers. So you got to remember that just because somebody says it doesn't make it true, and it doesn't make it a lie. It just means that's how they perceive it.
Well, Sharon Worley herself at the Donuts with the DA meeting last said herself that is not how it's done. Write up the complaint. So you don't just, if you're a cop, you don't just run around knocking on doors handing out tickets. Especially with crazy people giving false information to police officers, and that's another charge I brought against her. District attorney refused to, well, do anything. Her best advice was take it in the butt, take it in the prump, and move on.
Okay, Richard, you got anything else?
No, that'll be it.
Okay, thanks for calling.
Bye-bye now.
Okay, let me make a statement here that's going to probably raise some ruffled feathers. I had a meeting with the DA regarding my case, which was 3.5 years ago. And as you know, in my case, the primary witness against me wrote on affidavit that he was Mexican, and he wasn't. He was Caucasian. The other primary witness said she never made a statement. So who was it that made the statement? And whoever made the statement said she lived in a vacant lot.
Yeah.
So 2 of the 3 witnesses against me obviously would have, been thrown out of court because they weren't who they said they were when they made the statement. They were somebody else. And I don't know who made the statement against me to this day. So
it was like a band of gypsies.
Yeah, it was maybe 40 people in and out of that house. But my point is this: when I talked to the DA, she said, she'd watched my preliminary hearing and all the rest, and she said it could have easily been sent to the district court. And anyone will say that if you ever go in front of a jury, no matter how innocent you think you are, you can never guarantee you're going to be found innocent.
That's correct.
So out of a total lie, I could have ended up in a year in jail or, $5,000 fine?
For gross misdemeanor, $2,000 fine, I think it is.
$2,000, okay. We got to go to break now. We'll continue this after on the other side.